All right. Good morning, everyone. Morning, TechChill. Hope you're all doing great. It's good to be back. Thank you for the introduction, Maria. So I'm very, very excited to be here today with you to be discussing a topic that I find very, very important and that I think will gain a lot of prominence in the coming years. And to be joined by Mattias to be discussing this here, representing Winnow. And I think it's probably good to start all the way at the beginning to level the playing field and making sure that all of you guys really understand what we're going to be discussing this morning. So, Mattias, would you be so kind as to giving us a bit of background about what is Winnow? What do you guys actually work on since the inception of the company?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Sebastien and TechChill, for inviting me here. It's great to be here in Riga today. So we at Winnow, we are in the business of fighting food waste. And the company was founded back in 2013 with this in mind. And so our founders were, at the time, working for a McKinsey company, looking at environmental consulting, different questions there in that sphere. And then they came across this issue and felt that there's a need, really a need for this product that we have to tackle this problem. I think when we talk about food waste in general, I think it's good to point out a few sort of numbers that are out there just to highlight the scope of this issue in the world today. So I think the first one to recognize is that a third of all food that's being produced in the world is going to waste. So that's a huge amount. So then you can start to look at it both from an economic perspective and from an environmental perspective. So if you think about greenhouse gas emissions, for example, if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest food waste emitter after the United States and China. So that's how big the problem is. And in terms of dollars, we are looking at that represents $1 trillion almost, that food that's going to waste. And just the hospitality industry alone, globally, where we work, it's worth about $100 billion. So it's a huge issue that we wanted to tackle with our product.
I mean, discussing that, and I think that's the conversation we've had also in the last few days. It's obvious what you guys are actually doing with Winnow and how you're sort of tackling that problem, and also just why you guys decided to tackle this specific issue, considering how big of an issue it is for our entire planet. How did you start doing that in terms of like the clients that you guys are working with, both 7 years ago when you started with small businesses and some of the companies that you're actually working now? Like, can you give us some examples of companies that you work with and how that plays out?
So of course it was a very when we just started, our founders were able to get on board a few clients that have grown with us across this journey up until today. But of course when we started, it was small at that point. So we are today working with some of our big clients around the world, IKEA department stores. So if you think about their buffet restaurants, that's where we are with our system. We are in 157 IKEA stores around the world right now. And so it's I think in 40 countries. So it's really, really exciting. And some of the others we're working with today are the cruise line industry. It's a very, very big segment for us. They, of course, have a lot of food waste coming from their buffet operations on board their ships. And then we're also working with contract catering companies. So people like Compass Group and ISS, those types of guys.
So quite a number of companies. I mean, for everybody here in the audience to understand, we're not trying to brag about how big of a company Winnow is here. I think what I'm trying to illustrate and that I find fascinating when we were discussing this is, okay, we are aware that it is a big problem. We know how you guys started to tackle it 7 years ago and the kind of companies that you're trying to work with to be able to solve that problem. So I think this is clear. Now, sort of thinking a little bit about the main topic that we're trying to cover at TechChill is we want more companies that are doing good, that are making a social and environmental impact, but we also want to create sustainable financial businesses.
Yes.
And that's really what I found striking with Winnow was that the more clients you guys sign on, the more impact you're making, the more food waste you're saving, and the more money you're generating as a business. Now, you've run us through a few figures of some of the companies that you guys work with. For people in the audience to understand, like, what kind of impact are we talking about on an environmental scale with some of the clients that you guys are working with? What does that represent?
It's good that you brought it up. I mean, it's always a question of obviously the sustainability side of things with our customers that we're working with. But it also has to make financial sense for them. And what we usually can do when we go into a new kitchen with our system is reduce the food waste by, on average, about 53% in the first 12 months. So one good example that I had personally here just last year, we started working with a Finnish cruise ferry company called Viking Line. They are cruising from Finland to Sweden and Estonia as well. And when we put in the system in their, we put two systems in their main kitchen, and we were able to cut down their food waste by 27 tons in the first 4 months, which was quite amazing, I think. I was actually there myself on board to install the systems and train the crew as well. And that, of course, represented about 70,000 meals that we were able to save. So just so everybody understands, it's a system where we measure the food that's being thrown away by using a tablet and the scale. And then we deliver that data back that we get to the chefs and show him that, okay, you are wasting every week 10 kilos of tomatoes, so maybe you shouldn't buy that many tomatoes next week. And so they can adjust their purchasing accordingly. And that's where we see the savings for our clients.
So guys, 70,000 meals, 27 tons of food in 4 months, that's actually pretty incredible.
Yeah, of course, it always depends on where the client is when we start a project. Somebody is better than another one, but in this particular case, there was a lot of waste. And we see somewhere between, usually we can say that in the hospitality industry, around 4 to 12% of food cost is waste. So it can be even more than that. It can go up to 20% depending on the operation. So it's a significant amount.
I mean, this obviously sounds sort of best case scenario in picking a case where you guys have made a significant impact. You were talking about sort of averages. How many clients is Winnow currently working with, and sort of how would you say that evolves in terms of the percentage of the food waste across the board?
So we are currently in over 1,000 kitchens worldwide. I think the number is somewhere near 1,200 now. And this, of course, it is growth that comes from our strategic partners, from our strategic customers, but also from smaller clients in the different markets. So, for example, we don't have a presence here yet in the Baltic countries, but it, of course, would be interesting for us to enter this market as well. But I've been working in the Nordic market now for a year and a half, and we've seen good progress there in terms of growth. Within hotels, within catering as well.
So a number of potential development areas. You're just talking about growth. I think one point that I also find quite interesting to raise is the base solution of Winnow is, at the end of the day, relatively simple, right? You put a scale at the bottom of the bins, you measure how much food has been wasted, you have a software solution that builds the analytics and provides it to the chef, and all of the USP lies there. We're at a tech conference here at TechChill, and one aspect that I'd like to dive into is sort of the technological solution that you guys are building with Winnow. So over the years, that sort of shifted from being the scale and the LCD screen to something a little bit more elaborate. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, definitely. It's very exciting, and we've, as I said, when we started back in 2013, it was basically a scale that was connected to a simple tablet on the wall. And whenever you threw some food away in the bin, you pressed the right icon on the tablet, and it got registered what it was. So where we are moving now, and where the future is for us, is with artificial intelligence. So that's what we have now incorporated into the latest version of our product that we just released last year. So that's something that's really exciting, so that the system will eventually start learning automatically what it is that's being thrown away, and not requiring human input in terms of manually registering what you're wasting.
So you say it will do that automatically, which I think sounds wonderful. In terms of sort of where we are now with that solution and how accurate the camera is versus where it will be in a few years. So
Yeah.
what are we looking at in terms of timeline, in terms of accuracy?
So it's difficult to say an exact timeline. Where we are now, you can look at it in sort of 3 stages, this whole automation process, if you will. So when we started, in the first stage, it's basically just recording manually what it is that you're throwing away. It takes a bit of time, not much time, few seconds to register what you're throwing away. And then the system starts, there's a camera on top of the food waste bin that then takes pictures of everything. And it then starts learning what it is over time. So we need about 1,000 pictures, more or less, for the system to start learning what it is. So it depends, of course, on the food item itself. Some items are very distinct. A red tomato, it learns quickly, more quickly than, let's say, a bowl of Caesar salad that's being thrown away. That's a mix of different things. So once it starts learning, it then comes to the second stage, where it gives you a prediction. So let's say you're coming up, you're throwing away 5 tomatoes. It then gives you 5 options. It says, is this tomatoes, oranges, apples, lemons, or grapefruits? And then you just press the right one click, and that's it. So that's already taking the process and the whole process to a stage where it's much faster and easier for the person in the kitchen to use. And then the last stage, once we reach there, is then full automation. So you just come up to the bin, throw away what you're throwing away, and you walk away. So that's what we're aiming for. We're not quite there yet. We are in this sort of semi-automation stage with the predictions. But as we get more and more data, more and more pictures, we will move towards that stage.
Seamless, complete, automated system.
Yes.
We've been talking about sort of like how that is evolving for you and how as a company you've sort of been moving through those stages, building towards sort of your big target, having as many kitchens as possible using the system, reducing as much food waste as can possibly be reduced in the food industry globally. How do you sort of see the food tech industry, or in this case the food waste industry, moving in the next few years, not just for you guys, but for the rest of the industry as well?
Yeah, I think there's many interesting developments and many interesting startups that have come along in the last few years or so. So some of them that are tackling the problem from another angle, like we heard before, like Too Good To Go or Karma, these types of players. And then from our side, actually trying to reduce the food waste in the kitchen so that it doesn't occur in the first place. That's our angle going about it. So we've, of course, set a very ambitious target for ourselves. We're currently saving about $33 million worth of food waste for our customers. But in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, we also set ourselves a very ambitious goal of saving $1 billion worth of food waste by the year 2025. So that's the direction that we are going, and the target that we've set for ourselves. It's ambitious, but we believe we can get there.
Bold, I like it.
Yeah.
Bringing this back a little bit towards business at the end of the day, and for some of the companies that are here as well, this is a very impressive target that you guys set for yourselves, and I'm sure there's a lot of steps that are going to come into play to be able to realize it. Like, what are you guys focusing on the most in terms of sort of biz dev efforts to be able to get there? Like, what's the strategy to convince bigger brands and bigger players where, like IKEA, it's a long lead cycle to be able to get those people on board?
Yes, so we are fortunate now to have already sort of 4 or 5 sort of what we call strategic customers or large customers that we are working with. And so that's where we really see, that's where our focus is, and that's where we see the big growth. So if you think about, as I mentioned before, Compass Group on the contract catering side, we are with them now in I think about 13 countries, and we are growing step by step with those guys. So it's a question of running pilots in different countries, proving the case every time, because every country, every market is a little bit different, and adapting to those conditions in those particular markets. So I think we want to try to stay really sort of nimble and be able to adapt to where we're going, and that's our focus. And those we are working, of course, with sort of smaller customers as well, if you will. But really, to drive the business, and if we want to reach that big goal that we set for ourselves, I think through these big partners that we have, that's really where we're going to reach that goal.
So based in the UK, with offices a bit all around the world, you now take care of the Nordics as a region. Do you see potential for Winnow to expand in the Baltics?
Definitely we see potential. I think it's been a question of resources up until now and where we have focused. But I think, we are now in, as you said, the head office is in London. We have an office in Cluj in Romania. We have an office now in Singapore, Dubai, also a small office over in the US. So lots of potential in many markets. And I think the Baltic countries will be one part for us as well when we get there. I've started working a little bit now in Tallinn as well, obviously being close to Helsinki. So probably that will maybe be the first market for us in terms of the Baltic states.
Hopefully Riga comes next. If anybody's interested, grab Mattias afterwards.
Please do, please do.
There's one more thing that I'd like to cover before we wrap up. It's sort of, as Kit mentioned in the previous panel, for the entrepreneurs in the room and the startup founders that are trying to build a sustainable business that is being impactful but also financially sustainable. What are some of the tips that you would want to sort of exchange with those guys from the experience that you have with Winnow and how hard it can sometimes be to either land some of those contracts or develop in a market that's not ready yet? Like, what would you share with those guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy going into a new market and starting knocking on doors, but I think that's what you just have to do. And it's what I've done myself, really just going out there, meeting people, contacting people, knocking on doors. Of course, it helps in my case when we've had some contacts from before, maybe through the London office. But in many cases, it's been a question of just picking up the phone or shooting off an email and trying to get a meeting and just being persistent. I think that's the key. You're going to get a lot of no's, and there's going to be days when you don't feel so excited about it. But then there are days when you do feel very excited about it, and you're able to sign up a new client like Viking Line, for example. And those are the days that you really want to see and you're really aiming for. So I would say just be persistent, never give up, and just believe in your vision. I think those are the most important things.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that. On that note, thank you for your time, Mattias. For all of you guys, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much for having us, and have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thank you.